Hello, I'm Sheila Preston. I'm the founder of Thriving Facilitators, which supports practitioners who work in community and educational settings. And tonight I'm speaking with Liv McClennan, who's a member of Thriving Facilitators. And we're going to talk about Liv's work for a bit, and then we're going to talk about why Liv is part of Thriving Facilitators. So welcome, Liv.
Hello, nice to see you, Sheila.
Good to see you too. Would you like to begin by just introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Liv McClennan. I am primarily a community musician by trade, but I'm also a co-director of a community interest company called Music for Wellbeing. And I am a director with two others, and we met when we were at Goldsmiths on the community music course. So we focus on people with longer term health conditions, particularly dementia and lung health conditions at the moment, and then adults with learning disabilities and intergenerational music making as well. I also, outside of the CIC, I work with little children, so 0 to 5s, and yeah, do a lot of that kind of stuff, and community choirs, and whatever takes my fancy, really. But really focusing on the CIC work at the moment.
Yeah, so you're also doing a PhD as well? Is that right?
I'm trying to, yeah.
In your spare time, when you have a moment.
Yeah. It's very part-time. So I'm heading towards upgrade this academic year, she says, hopefully. But I'm really lucky, so it's practice-based in intergenerational music in care homes. So I've done a pilot project, and I'm just kind of trying to bring that all together now in the write-up.
Yeah. Wow, so you've got masses on your plate. And has that changed a lot during COVID? Has there been any particular challenges for you in this time?
Yeah, so obviously initially I saw my work just collapse overnight, as a lot of other people in this sector did. And we managed to transfer a lot of our work online, actually, after the first kind of month or so, thinking, oh, we'll be back soon, we'll pause until we get back in the room. And then it was very clear that wasn't going to happen. So we've managed to transfer some work online. I primarily do the lung health work in Wiltshire, and that's online, and we're just coming into a new phase there. And my colleague works in London with learning disabilities online. So the big challenge, though, aside from learning all the technology and becoming more expert in things I had no interest in at all, like microphones before, reaching people with dementias, we've had to pause our dementia work at the moment, because a lot of people don't even have mobiles or smartphones, let alone access to the internet. So we're kind of working on that side of things, and hopefully going to be setting up a digital inclusion project where I am. Well, we'll see if we get the funding kind of in the new year. And I think it's particularly important at the moment with going back into lockdown, and it's really highlighting the kind of inequalities of the social, the digital access, and health inequalities as well. So there's been, huge, exciting things, and then kind of lows as well over COVID. So our work's obviously changed massively because of that. But I think there's lots of opportunities that have opened up as well. And, I've worked with people internationally now, as I'm sure you have too, a lot more, as well as being able to reach very local people. But then there's also the people that aren't getting access to our work at the minute.
And so obviously this has been a particularly challenging time, but there's an issue generally around support for facilitators who are doing this work often in settings that are quite challenging for various completely different reasons often. What do you have a view about kind of support for practitioners generally, and what there is out there?
Yeah, well, actually there's been a growth in this last year or so, but prior to that, it was very much, I would think, or in my experience, focused mainly on kind of supervision type things, but from that kind of presented as clinical supervision, and that's not always what I wanted or felt I wanted or needed. And then there's the informal peer support that a lot of us have managed to kind of work with over the years. But no, I mean, with the Thriving Facilitators, it's why I was looking for something like this for a long time that's really focused on people that aren't necessarily clinicians or therapists, but do work in similar settings, perhaps with a slightly different focus, but don't get that kind of support that you have to as part of being a therapist. Since lockdown, there's a couple of other things that have started up in various different formats and for various different types of people. I'm also kind of keyed into those. But I think just in terms of meeting people who work in the sector and just understand the challenges very specifically about being facilitators rather than therapists, this is kind of one of its kind, really.
Yeah. So you're one of the very first members and we started just before, sort of around January, didn't we? And a bit before then. And I'm sort of wondering, sort of thinking back, what made you decide to take the plunge to join Thriving Facilitators? It was brand new at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think we had a chat over Twitter. It was because I can't remember why, but I was talking about support networks and not being not much around, and it just felt I'd been doing this work a long time, kind of over a decade, and I've been looking for something like this for at least 5 or 6 years. So it kind of it was. Yeah, the time really.
The right moment for you.
Kind of over the right moment really. I just felt that I needed that because I work with people with dementia and people in challenging health circumstances primarily, and could potentially challenging social circumstances, and you take a lot of that on board. Even when you have worked out how your coping strategies, it still can stay with you. So it's for me, it was just so important to try and find somewhere where I can kind of release, I suppose, in some ways, or get another perspective, or just be able to meet people that are doing the similar kind of work. For me, it's quite important to have a structured way of doing that, because you don't feel like you're imposing on people and everyone's there for the same reason and kind of they've chosen to be there in the right headspace to kind of be there as well. So that's what I was looking for, and that's what kind of made me join, really. And then it took me a while, but I'd read your book, but I hadn't connected the two people, and then they kind of all came together, and I was like, oh, okay, no, this is definitely the perfect kind of time. I was thinking, about facilitation, obviously that's what you had done and researched and kind of written about, so it just seemed the right kind of time to join.
Yes, great. And how would you describe what Thriving Facilitators is to someone who doesn't really know anything about it?
So it's a variety of opportunities and approaches to enabling you to look at your practice as a facilitator, to be able to develop it in a kind of your relationship with your own practice, I suppose I'd put it like that, and to gain peer support, but also just other perspectives on the work, how it makes you feel, and giving you opportunities to explore your next steps and to develop yourself through that. So hopefully that's
it's what you get from it.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the things is that people are getting slightly different things depending on what they're coming into. There's the kind of coaching sessions, and then there's other sessions. There's the online platform, but I know that some people prefer to turn up to the live stuff, and other people watch the online stuff. That kind of thing. But I think you like to turn up to the live sessions, don't you?
For me it's the accountability. I personally am not great at doing recorded sessions because I have all the time in the world to do them, so therefore I don't do them. So for me, I really love the fact there's a mixture. So if I did actually find myself doing a recorded session, that's great. But it's the accountability of the liveness, the interaction, and just bringing myself into that space however I am at that time. But I've enjoyed, we've got the book clubs, and I've read stuff that I wouldn't have ever thought I would read, and that's really had a good impact as well for me, and got me thinking about my practice in different ways, and just generally my relationships with other people. So that's been really positive. And what else have we done? Oh yes, you had the vision and planning day, and that for me came at a great time. It's a whole day just being able to concentrate on what I wanted to think, to do next. And actually things came up that it surprised me actually that lots of things, the way you structured it, got me to think about stuff that I hadn't thought that was important, and it came to the fore. So that, that was really great, and I've kind of been working on that that side of things and kind of developing that, because it obviously got to the stage where I feel that's the way forward then, and I came to the day with an open mind and didn't expect anything like that to happen. So I've got lots of different things from it over the last kind of nearly a year now.
And what would you say to someone who was a bit unsure about whether to join or not?
So I would say it's a great bunch of people that have joined. They all get what you're doing. It's a worthwhile investment in yourself and your practice as well. So it's not necessarily CPD, but it definitely helps you develop. It helps you think about your practice in a different way, but also yourself. And it's just a worthwhile investment, I'd say.
Oh, that's very positive. So but I like the way that you're saying that there's yourself, the way that you're kind of shifting in yourself, but also your practice, that those two things are kind of sitting there alongside each other. Definitely. And I think as facilitators and practitioners in the kind of work we do, it's quite hard to separate all of that out. Because you do bring a lot of yourself into the work, for understandably, I do. But just being able to take a chance to step back and reflect with others is it's been so helpful. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Liv. Thank you. It's been good to hear about your work and also hear about how you're feeling about Thriving Facilitators as well, which is fantastic. And one of the other things that strikes me is the diversity of practitioners. I always find that quite interesting. So you've got musicians, and then you've got drama practitioners, and then you've got people who work in mental health, and you've got various people from different parts of the country, international as well, and they're all bringing their different perspective in to the work. That's something that I like about it.
It's great. And I love that too, because I mean, sometimes community arts practitioners can be accused of just talking to themselves a little bit because it's comfortable and we're kind of on the same page. So for me, it's really nice to step outside that as well. But especially with having a mix of people who are in academia as well as on the coal face too, and people like me who try and do both. Somehow.
There's definitely that balance, isn't there, between there's practitioners and there's academic stroke practitioners as well, and that kind of talks to it as well.
Absolutely. And then having the perspective of, like you're saying, in other kind of the mental health side and everything, and just getting a kind of quite holistic view of people who work in the various settings, a kind of multidisciplinary view, as well as just different personalities as well. It's great.
It's so important. Well, thank you so much, Liv. Thank you for this.
Welcome.
So the membership is actually opening. I don't know if you knew this, but the membership is opening tomorrow. So people will be able to join Thriving Facilitators. So if you are thinking about joining, you only have to pay for a month, because it's you're not locked into anything, and it's I've designed it so that it's affordable. And that was the other thing, because we've talked about that before, haven't we, about the kind of affordability aspect of it. Do you feel that it's kind of priced about right for all practitioners? Because I wanted it to be accessible, and I know that supervision one-to-one can be very expensive for people to keep up.
I do think it is. Any kind of outlay is hard, but I think it's well worth it. And when you work it out, it's £5 to £7 or something like that a week. A little bit more, but it's a couple of coffees. You think actually some people, if you're doing that, or it's kind of, you can just cut that back and then
when you look at it in that way.
Just invest in yourself. So I do think it's worth it. And yeah, I've kind of gained much more through that kind of small investment. So I'd highly recommend it.
That's great. Lovely. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll see you next week after the Imposter Syndrome Challenge. After that. Okay.
Thanks,
care.
Sheila. Bye.
See you. Bye. I just need to end broadcast.